All right, we are live. So welcome to the first School-Based Enterprise Academy in 2020, virtual. We've got over 20 plus individuals. We are here this morning to talk about best practices in running an SBE. So thank you for all of you that are here. And thank you for any individuals that are watching this amazing video of Sean and Tim and the gang. So at this point, we are going to pass it over to the group. So is there a question? And I can, if you want to raise your hand or if you want to put in the chat, I would love to turn your microphone on and or your webcam on, and love to have you join us and then have us be all collaborating.
So I'm going to start by sharing my screen so that we can kind of see those topics. All right. So the first topic that we have is gaining support to start an SBE.
And I know there's a number of people on the call that are interested in starting one. So I'd love to have people, and we've got a question from Jennifer that says, what products are best to sell for an online store? So thanks for the question, Jennifer, appreciate that. So we can have people either type, but I'd love to have people actually like raise their hand and be able to share with the group. So if you're willing to kind of let me know as you think about online stores or even starting a store, any attendees that would love to be able to chime in, I will turn on your microphones and turn on screens if you want to go from there. And don't be shy. These are the marketing and business teachers, so this should be where we are fighting to speak. Okay, we've got one person that want raise their hand. So Tracy, thank you. So I'm gonna bring you into the mix, Tracy. Hopefully you can now be able to talk, if I did it right.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Tracy.
Okay, so I just went online when we went under quarantine, but it was strictly for the staff, and I wanted to test it out because there had been a lot of pressure from my administrators to go online because parents were asking, but with it being my first year teaching, I didn't even want to throw that in the mix. However, what worked out well is, especially during quarantine, a lot of the teachers were reaching out to me. They wanted sweats because that became our go-to, daily clothing. So sweatpants did well. I came up with a new t-shirt that wasn't available before. It was a kind of play on the Friends slogan. So it had our school name where Friends would be, and then it said the one with Northside Pride. I'm looking to continue to do that and bring it available to the students and do like a BOPIS program. So buy online, pick up in the store during lunch period. So I got some hoodies that were a really good price point. I was selling them for about $20. I was making probably $3 off a sweatshirt. I'm going to put those on there. Some t-shirts, sweatpants, and then probably some knit hats because I had some Champion knit hats last year. Just being very price conscious for both staff and for students. I did have some higher price points when it came to some of my Champion apparel. But I found that that's the things that sold better during our conferences with our parents. So I'm just looking at more of a price conscious level right now with t-shirts, hoodies, and sweatpants.
And Tracy, there's a follow-up question from the group on like what program or software did you use to do this online store?
We use Square, so I just followed the instructions on the Square program to bring it online. The only problem is they assign you the the website name, which is kind of a random numbers and letters thing. So I had to make sure that I had that link available and email several times to my staff.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate your willingness to step up and speak with everybody. So thank you. Other individuals that are willing to share either about either online or even starting a store, because I know there's a number of people on here that did start one from scratch. Luann, I'm going to call on you. Thank you so much. Luann, I'm giving you, hopefully you have a chance to now speak, and
I'm ready. Can you hear me?
you should, yeah, we can.
So I have been at 2 high schools for 4 years now, half-time at each, and only one school am I trying to gain a foothold for the school store. The school store has been there for 20, 30 years, but over the last 5 years, there hasn't been a class to support it because, you know, cuts and me working at 2 schools. And so it has taken all of that 5 years by going to the principal and getting my department's support and talking to every single teacher that I can about, well, you know, the store would be open if I had a class to support it, because they're always like, how come you're only open once in a while after school? Well, because I'm only one person and I have 2 kids who will step up and help run it. So that limited me in a lot of ways. So it took all this time, and I am thrilled to say, even though I don't even know if we're going to school or not, that I now will have a retail merchandising class to support the school store. But it took begging and pleading and talking and twisting and showing the support for it and talking about it being a lab and talking about kids working in retail and 94,000 other reasons. Basically, they were sick of me, I think. Honestly, they were sick of hearing from me. And now this year, I finally have a class to support that. We still don't know how we're going to work it out with me working at 2 schools and running that store, but I'm going to figure it out.
That's amazing, and congratulations. That's a hard feat to do. I remember back in my previous job, didn't have a space. I wanted a store. I asked my principal, hey, there's Walmart is going out of business. I'm going to go and buy merchandise, or I'm going to buy shelving and displays. And my principal's like, you're out of your mind. Like, you don't have a space. I'm like, well, let's just go. And then I call them from the auction. And they said, I need the district van or truck because I bought so much stuff. And of course, my custodians didn't love me because I didn't have a place to put it. I literally put it in a corner of the cafeteria, and you have to be persistent. You have to be willing to keep advocating for the students and the school-based enterprise. So Luann, thank you so much for your sharing. Appreciate it. We're gonna move on to Katie. Katie, go ahead. Thanks for raising your hand.
Good morning, everyone. I wanted to let you know one of the things that I've worked on. Our school store does have an online presence, but with COVID-19 and my employees not being able to fulfill orders, we did have to shut that down for that run, but I wanted to have some options available. So my local vendor that I work with, I have a local vendor, and then I have some other people that I work with on different side jobs. Approached us and said, hey, we have an opportunity to make some face mask / neck gaiters, and looking at that, and they were actually able to host that website, and they actually processed the whole thing on their end. They took the credit cards, they did all the shipping and all that stuff. And then all I had to do was just take that website that they had created and promote it and share it out. So I shared that out via emails. Within our district, we actually have a Black Creek School and our Seymour schools. The Black Creek School does not buy anything that says our Seymour Thunder logo on it, so I actually then had another face mask designed for the Black Creek logo as well. So that was one way that even though we were closed and I didn't have students that was actually able to run and manage and process orders, that we've been able to go through and continue with that. I do believe my local vendor uses Inksoft. And then what happens at the end of that is we'll actually go through and they will write a check to us for the profit on that. I did order some extra neck gaiters with our logo on it that I'll be able to have in stock at our store for sale for this fall, hopefully, if we are back open. I talked with other people and they thought that would be a good idea, even if we're like at a soccer game or something like that, people could wear and just try to stay a little bit warmer, as well as using it for a face mask purpose.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. I saw that Beth had provided a nice comment in the chat. To get support, I had my students prepare a presentation to the school board. We created our rolling school store from an old TV cart. So I think what is an awesome comment that Beth has made, people don't need to have this beautiful 10,000 square foot amazing space when you start. You can have a cart. You can have any way that you can think about ways to get things going. But I love the idea of presenting to the school board and being able to kind of go that route. So thank you. Appreciate your comment, Beth. I know Keith also talked about Squarespace as another platform. I know there's some questions that kind of followed up when Tracy had asked about kind of what ways that when we start getting into shipping and some of those elements of it, some great chat conversations going on. So who else has wanting, oh, we got Sarah, thanks. I'm gonna get you, thank you for raising your hand, Sarah. You should be all ready to chat. If you want to show your screen or chat, however you want to do it.
I'll just chat. So I started the school stores in Janesville at Janesville Craig, and John Zimmerman and I started stores at Craig and Parker the same year. And it was basically when we had renovations. And so we were able to build space from there. I know John Zimmerman had the barn, which was really just talking about what you were just talking about with space. It was just really a closet. And so they were then able to build a space that was specific to the store. I know that when I did it at Craig, we were not in a thoroughfare area. It was more of a destination. Even though it was a brand new store, it really is important to have it as kind of a main space because kids had to really make a point to go to the store at Craig, whereas at Parker, when they built it, it was right in the main commons area, and they had a lot more traffic, so that was helpful there. And then when I went to Edgerton, we did not have a store there, and so luckily my principal was my assistant principal at Craig, and so he was very supportive of having a store at Edgerton, and he wanted it so badly that he gave up his office, and we renovated that into just a little bit of a store space. This year we're going through renovations, and so it's now going to be a custom built store in the commons area. He was very supportive of making sure that it had everything that we wanted it to have while we were going through all of the changes, and that it is right front and center in the commons area, right outside the cafeteria, right outside the main doors. So it'll be accessible from the gym for any of the games and anything like that as well. So really having buy-in from your administration is going to be key to being able to have some funding to get the supplies that you need and the startup, and being able to go from there.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarah. Just as a reminder, Perkins 5, not that you care that there's a new authorization of Perkins, but Perkins 5 funding can do some amazing things for a school-based enterprise. It can buy a square, it can buy displays, it can buy a number of different elements that is an amazing use of funds. So if you haven't used Perkins funding in the past, this is another way, and maybe because it hasn't been budgeted for this coming year, you can't do it right now, but at the same time, I think it would be great. Before we go on to student staffing, I don't want to put Courtney Pierce on the spot, but I had a chance to visit Courtney in her old spot in Beaver Dam, and that was my first teaching job. It was a different place, and they built an amazing school store, and I know Courtney was part of that. So Courtney, I'm wondering if you're willing to maybe share just what you saw, maybe learning growing pains, if you will, like where I know when they built it, it was a renovation in space. What did you learn? What would you have changed? Love any feedback maybe you could share with the group.
So one thing I didn't know we'd have to do, but we had to buy all of our furniture for the store, or like all the displays and everything. So that was a big chunk of our profit the first year. So our first year, I don't think we profited anything, just buying all that, buying all the clothes. Some of the pains is just the inventory of clothes. Like we didn't buy a lot of it, so it was more expensive, like per order. So that sucked up a lot of our money, but our big thing was food. Our school didn't really care what I sold. I don't think they ever really walked in my store. So we sold basically anything I got from Amazon. Let's see, we raised prices the second year from the SBE conference. Some of you guys said you charge however much for food items. So I upcharged the second year, and that actually went pretty good. Students still paid for the food when it was 25 cents or 50 cents higher. So that was something good to learn. I don't have cameras in there, and I don't have my room next to it. So that was kind of hard to monitor because kids will leave messes in there or eat lunch in there. So that was a growing pain of trying to keep the kids responsible, but also not having, I don't know, just not being able to see who's actually making the mess. So it's kind of like a hearsay thing. Yeah, I don't know. Anything else?
No, I think that's great. I appreciate it. Could people pay with a credit card?
Yes, but we didn't have the swiper thing, so those had to be entered manually, so that was a pain in the butt. But the program that we used charged a fee, so we just basically said that was like the tax. So they paid the tax instead of the store paying that transaction fee.
Okay, great. I appreciate Courtney. Go ahead, Sean.
Courtney, can I have a follow-up? Was your administration a little hesitant about students and manually entering in cards?
No.
Did they know? That's another question.
Yeah, they knew.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I had to enter every single transaction in compared to like, I don't know if anybody else has to do that, but I had to keep a whole spreadsheet on every single transaction. And then the bank person in our district also saw that so that we would like cross-check each other.
Okay.
But no, they weren't leery of that. I didn't feel like spending the $80 to buy the transaction thing, or the swiper.
Right. Thank you, Courtney. Appreciate you kind of sharing just when we called on you. All right, we're gonna, any follow-up final, we will have a chance to talk a little more about gaining support, but I want to have time to go into student staffing and management strategies. This was obviously the number one area that we had people kind of talk about. So as we set the stage, I think this can be always an interesting one on how do you get people to staff it? How many times do students work? Is it associated to a class? Are you open all day long? How do I stay open? Like, can we be open during study halls? Can we be open during like before school, after school, during lunch periods? So student staffing management strategies. Do you have a second year class that is going to be the managers that oversee the first year students? Kind of go from there. I remember when I started a school-based enterprise, and honestly every year that I had it, the school-based enterprise became a harder prep for me all day long than any class I was teaching, because I was in there on my off periods. I was potentially doing too much. I was baking cookies. I was actually helping do transactions. I was doing inventory. It's a nonstop. I mean, I loved it, but at the same time, like it takes over your life. So I'm going to go on. I know we've got some comments that are in the chat. I know Ember said for the after-school staffing, I decided to contract it out to FBLA and gave points and a % of the profits to FBLA for staffing the store. Ember, do you want to talk a little more about that, or is that all that you want to share? I can gladly unmute you. I don't want to put you on the spot, Ember, but that's a great suggestion with that. Anyway, so I will take hands at this point. So I would love to have anyone kind of raise their hand, talk about strategies, talk about questions. Maybe you have got, maybe it's not a strategy, but maybe it's a concern. So I got Katie. Katie, thank you again. We're going to turn you on to be able to speak. So go ahead.
Good morning. My school store has been around for a while. And what I have been noticing in the last couple years is I have some really good students, they are very business minded, and they are taking classes at the tech school. They are interested in going into business, and I approach them and I say, hey, would you be interested in being a school store manager? And I am getting more and more of, no, I don't want to work that hard, or no, I don't want to do that. It's like they don't want to make a commitment to actually do and be more. And I'm curious to see if anyone else is finding that as well, or if it's just more apathy on the students that I have in my school. That's kind of my question.
Yeah, it's a great question, Katie, and I think that's real. So I'm going to call on Diane here and see what she has to say. Go ahead, Diane.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Katie, that's not just your school. I think many of us have had this conversation before. How do you get students excited about working in the school store? I have it attached to their grade, which has some challenges too. Got myself in a bit of a pickle this year with in first semester before we were in quarantine with a student who was unable to work the minimum number of shifts due to an illness, but you know, the problem was he waited to sign up till like the last week of school or last couple weeks, and then couldn't work his shift, and so that caused issues because I did downgrade him, and administration said I couldn't do that. My administration actually wants me to pay my students to work in the store, which I refuse to do for several reasons, but our business manager said absolutely not, because then they would be considered an employee of the district and have to deal with taxes and all that. So she was supporting me on the not side of that, but it certainly is a struggle. Just so that you know, it's not unique to your school. I think many of us are having some of the same concerns and issues.
Thank you so much, Diane. I appreciate you stepping up and kind of sharing some elements. I'm going to go to Marissa in just a second. We are looking at the chat wise. Lots of comments. I'm not going to read all of them, but same struggles. You know, I see one that talked about Tracy Nielsen said, my class for the store has an internship attached, so their internship grade is based on participation outside the class management position. So that's kind of a good, interesting model to use. A lot of other people have said yes, kids are hard to commit, reluctant students, same struggles, ask for volunteers during study halls, with help with others. So I think special ed students have worked and helped. I've had special ed students in my past school-based enterprise that they would come and help do inventory and help do restocking and do some great elements of that. So I think that's an awesome way to be able to do that. Amanda said our managers signed up for an advanced marketing course where they're in the store each day for a period. Students tend to love this, actually want to be a manager due to the flexibility of the class. So appreciate all those comments. I'm now going to turn it over to Marissa. Hold on, I'm going to need to promote you to a different way. So Marissa, hopefully you can now be able to speak. You are muted, but we can see you, so that's a positive start. All right.
Better?
Yes, way better.
I just wanted to comment about paying students. So something that I've done that seems to work well is my students do have to punch in and punch out using our punch clock at the beginning and end of each shift. And for each shift they work in a week, they get 50 cents per shift, but it's on a PAW gift card. So it can only be spent. So it's basically, recycling money through the store. But most kids work, let's say 20, 25 shifts a month. And so I have a student who's in charge of payroll who needs to keep track of how often people are working and do the spreadsheet and document all of that. And then, the student reloads the PAW cards. We collect them at the end of each month. Usually takes about 3 days. Then, they add whatever money the student has earned onto that gift card. and then the students get that back and can use that to buy whatever they want. Some kids save it up and use it throughout the entire, or save it up all year, and then at the end of the year they've earned maybe 40 or 50 bucks and can get a nice sweatshirt. Most kids, you know, payday is like the day they go crazy and buy all of the junk food, but it's their money. They can do with what they want. They don't, you know, I tell them you shouldn't sign up to work in the paw just because of the 50 cents per shift, but it is a little extra added incentive. And that's another word of mouth thing that that students see, that other students who don't work in the paw see that and they're like, oh, you get paid? And it's like, well, yes and no. So it's something that I've been able to do internally, just using gift cards within my school store, that the students get paid, but it's not like they're getting paid minimum wage.
And Marissa, there's a question from the group asking, what program do you use for the punch clock?
I bought a time clock. I just replaced it last year because we had an old one. So I bought one off of Amazon for 120 bucks, and it came with, you know, 200 punch cards that the students actually have to physically insert in the machine, and it'll, you know, it'll punch in and out. So yeah.
Okay.
For those who are looking into a punch clock option, there is a free software called Homebase. Is my screen still being shared?
Yeah. Yes.
Homebase scheduling.
Marissa, thank you. I'll take you off the screen now.
So I have it on the screen right now. So you can set up a free account where students can clock in and out, and you can have predetermined shifts already established. Or you can, this last year I used Perkins to pay my $20 per month, where when students clocked in and out, they, the Homebase actually took a picture of the students clocking in and out. So that is another option if you want a free option of a time clock.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. I know, Keith, you mentioned that you've used Homebase, but Square also clocks in and out if you buy the retail monthly package. Keith, do you want to share any more, or does anyone want to share a little bit about maybe how Square? So it's up to, I don't want to put you on the spot, Keith, but if you want to, I can turn your microphone on. Thanks, Keith. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't really have too much to say about it. We use Homebase, and I do choose to pay for the retail upgrade for Square, which is about $60 per month. And we also pay for Homebase. There's an upgraded package. I think it's maybe like $8 or $10 a month or something. It's smaller than the Square for retail, because I have like over 20 employees and you can just do some other stuff. But basically the two programs talk to each other. So you can like track sales between the two. The kids can clock in and clock out. And like Marissa was saying, she pays her students on a gift card. You can buy gift cards for Square, and then you can load money onto those gift cards. When I used to use a different system, that Positive POS, so you might have seen it like Deca before, you could go into the back end of their system and add money to a gift card and it would not count for sale or anything. Unfortunately, with Square, the only way I've figured it out that you can, you know, pay students on a gift card is to physically sell a gift card to that student. So kind of like Marissa, you know, we have someone who does payroll every other week, and they're responsible for collecting everybody's gift card, putting the money on the gift card, and then giving that gift card back to the person within, you know, an advisory period or whatever it might be. So I don't know, that's what we use. And I think I got Homebase from another teacher at a previous SBE conference.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate that. We've got a comment from Kim. I don't know, Kim, if you're willing to share a little more about this. I'm sure the group would love to hear. You said you use Crew, C-R-E-W, free version to post weekly schedules for the North Market convenience store. Messages can be sent to as well to the entire staff. Keep my Google-based store manual for quick access by students. So Kim, would you be willing to share a little more about that? If not, no worries. We can, yeah, let me, I will turn your mic on. So if you're willing, I will definitely. So Kim, you are all set. So just turn off your mute and you can be able to share a little more about what Crew is. Go ahead, Kim. We can't hear you yet, Kim, so I don't know if we're having some technical issues. Yeah, you're right. We can't hear you at this point, so I'm sorry. Not sure exactly why sound. Let me try to see if you can. Let me try to. We'll do it again. All right, Kim, try it again. See if you can speak. Try one more way. Kim, are you there? Okay, we will try again a little bit later. So I apologize for not being able to. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so we will come back back to you. But appreciate you sharing. If you can add any comments in the chat, we would love to be able to hear more about what that is. So looking at the group wise, any additional comments about?
There's a comment from Sarah to Keith. So Keith, Sarah has a question for you related to Square. About, did you have a tough time converting everything? And what about using existing gift cards that are out there from the old system?
So I will unmute Keith here. Go ahead, Keith, thanks.
So you mean the gift cards from the positive POS? No, you can't do that. You have to buy new gift cards from Square. And I'm not 100% if like the numbers are tied to each other or not, but basically the barcode on the back. And then what was the other question, Sean?
When you went from the POS system, you meant so positive POS to Square. Did you have a tough time converting everything?
There's no way to transfer anything. You just have to start over. So what we've done is more or less every year I clear out stuff I'm not going to keep for the next year, which is mostly different apparel items. And that's kind of like my way of just getting rid of old inventory and such. And then putting in new items every year. So I have a student that is in charge of the POS system and inventory, or I have two students some years that kind of work together and inputting all of that stuff. So you can do things like t-shirt, $10, or you can literally do, you know, the t-shirt with the eagle on it in size green or in green, size small, medium, large, extra large, 2X, 3X, 4X, et cetera, and do like that same shirt in black and all of the sizes and the same shirt in gray. It just depends on like how deep you want to get into your inventory. We've always went fairly deep into our inventory because when you then convert over to an online store, all of your inventory is there and you can just tell Square to put your inventory in your online store and you literally put on a picture and you're ready to go. So the deeper you are with that, the easier it is and the better data you have. But someone who is starting off, I would literally do like t-shirt size small. Like that would be your inventory. You know what I mean? Just very, 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 very basic. And then you can even put buttons on the register for frequently used items. So, you know, instead of like we have barcode scanners, you wouldn't even have to buy those. You could put like bag of chips, 75 cents, and then there's a button right on the register. So you could not transfer over your inventory from the previous system, but luckily Square, you can upload Excel files or X whatever those files are, but basically Excel files, and it all populates for you and it helps you out pretty quickly. For the gift cards, I have gift cards that I used a while ago that I can still use, but I've like updated the front picture. So like my old gift cards from when I first got Square have like an old picture of a school store logo that we don't use anymore. So I can use those and just give to my school store kids because they don't care what the front of it says. But like my new gift cards obviously have like our new logo or have a picture of like our Eagle mascot or whatever on them. And those are reloadable. So they cost like, I don't know, maybe like 50 cents a piece depending on how many you buy. So you never want to give those to the kids like after they're empty, like when they buy something and clear it out. Like I always take those gift cards back because they're just a cost. So if the kid uses a gift card and doesn't want to keep it, we always keep it and then reload it for somebody else who wants to buy a gift card. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate the follow-up. As we are looking at the screen, we may not hear Kim, but she is magically typing in information into our notes. So I appreciate that, Kim. As you're seeing on the screen, the Crew app, it's a via App Store or Google Store. It's free, good with a Google environment. Sends student weekly schedule out on Sunday evening for an upcoming week. Students can ask for coverage if they need to make up a test or a reason they cannot work a shift. The announcement feature, price changes, issues like leaving water bottles out on the sales station. So it sounds pretty amazing. So it looks like the students download the app. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Kim, for sharing that information. While we are on this, Sean, I think we're gonna skip over popular products and services, and we're gonna actually go down to that point of sale, kind of like what we're talking about to keep this going. So, because we had popular products and services, but then we also now talk about point of sale or Square or cash registers. So I'd love to have people that either have questions on like, what do you use, or like functionality of Square. We've talked a little bit. What questions, or anyone want to raise their hands to maybe either share some information about your cash register, your inventory management side of life, or if you've got a question for the group that maybe has been burning, raise your hand and let us know, and we will have you share it. Okay. We will pause on that. Then what we'll do, Sean, we'll come back to that because we've talked a bunch about Square, talked a bunch about Crew. The question that Michelle asked is, I still use POS. What is the advantage of switching to Square? So Keith says everything, which I used to use the old POS system when I had my school-based enterprise, and for what I know, what you can do with Square from the technology standpoint, from the actual analytical standpoint, and like the actual reports that you can teach students about, I think there's a lot of benefits with using Square versus the old, traditional POS. So I don't know if others have questions. We can definitely talk about that further. Otherwise, we can pause. Keith kind of said you can use your district tax info. Can you charge on an account with Square? Is the question?
Yeah.
And Sean, do you want to comment about that?
So yes, you can charge on account. They have a function called, they have an invoice function. So that's how they can charge on account. I only use it for larger groups that I know will pay me. A couple times I have ordered shirts for different student organizations or clubs around my school. So I will charge them on account. But I never allow students to charge on account because I don't know if I'm ever going to get that money. But there is an option to do so.
So question for you, Sean, or the group, what types of costs with Square? So when you think about like maybe the upfront, or is there anything that's monthly? What kind of costs are we looking? There are some fees associated with Square. So to use Square as just a POS system it can be free.
So Keith had mentioned how he uses Square Retail. There's also, for those of you who might be running coffee shops and might want to do the food service, same type of package, there is that available as well. But to use this POS just as a POS is free. Now, when you start taking credit cards and debit cards, there is a per transaction fee. So whether you tap or swipe, there's a different charge. I believe it's 10 cents. And then there's also a back-end fee of, they just raised fees in November. I think it's 2.9%. If someone wants to correct me on that, they know off the top of their head. But there is a small back-end fee. There it is. Yes, 2.75 plus 30 cents if you're. I think 30 cents is if you're manually typing it in. I think it's a little less if you're if you insert. So it depends on how you're actually making the transaction go through. And then for what you use for your financial side, so for my financial side, I actually had my accounting student. I had the accounting students this past year create income statements and balance sheets for the school store, which was a really great opportunity for them. So that's how I kind of, that's how I use that. So I'll open up for other people to kind of weigh in as well.
And Courtney made a good comment saying, charge that fee to customers. It's considered their tax, kind of tax. We did that and never had an issue with people complaining, just had a written statement on the checkout table so that they were aware of the fees, which I think is a great way to do it. So then you're not incurring additional costs for you to be able to do that. So I think that's a great suggestion. Any other comments about Square or this before we're going to switch to, I don't want to run out of time, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about maybe gold certification SBE, but that can always be next week as well. Keith said, I think that it is against credit card companies' policies, by the way. So that's probably true. So I think you got to just look at kind of obviously how you're charging. Courtney is not going to be there anymore, and maybe we can just say whoops. So we're going to switch gears. We're going to switch to popular products and services. So this can be anything from when we already talked about online stores to vendors. We are going to have a couple vendors next week. Keith, you want to just talk about like the type of vendors so they all know who's going to be participating next week to hear about vendors? Or Sean, I'm sorry, Sean, I don't know actually Keith. So
that's okay. So the two vendors that we're going to have next week are both apparel vendors. I was not able to secure a food vendor, it just didn't work out with scheduling. But the two apparel vendors we're going to have is Cheryl Kofi from Elite Apparel out of Pleasant Prairie. So she'll spend a lot of time going to trade shows to really make sure she stays current on trends. I know there's a lot of people who have used her that are on this call right now. So she is a very good price point and very quick on deliverable of items. And the other vendor that I'm bringing in is Matt Haas out of BSN Sports. So BSN Sports has been a couple of different companies. So many of you in the Sun Prairie, Madison area may have known as College Town. And then they were bought out by another company, which I can't remember the name, and then now they're bought out by BSN Sports. So the main reason why I'm bringing BSN Sports in is as we're kind of going into this hybrid online space, BSN Sports has an option to have an ongoing online store throughout the year. So if you're not going to be able to operate face-to-face within your stores, you might be able to offer this online opportunity where the BSN Sports was actually, when I did a trial run with them this past semester, and they actually took all the credit card information and shipped it directly to customers. So I was able to design products for my school. So those are the two members coming in.
Thanks, Sean. We've got Katie that has a question. Go ahead, Katie.
I didn't have a question. I was just going to talk about
Go Go ahead.
Food.
Thanks.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I'd love it for sure. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely.
One of the things that my school store does is we bake fresh Otis Spunkmeyer cookies. And then we used, I can't remember the exact name of the cookie that meet the health food guidelines. Does anyone remember what it's called?
It's a whole grain.
It's whole grain,
something.
but Otis Spunkmeyer has a specific brand of cookies that meet it, and I can't remember what it's called. It's not called. Their brand
Yeah,
isn't called.
I've ordered off Amazon.
Yep. And so for me, that was a pretty big changer because my kids would go through and we'd break them in the afternoon and we would sell them, and we sell 2 cookies for $1. And we sell them specifically 2 cookies for $1 because we don't want to worry about having change and having to deal with giving quarters out, and kids did not mind at all buying 2 for $1. And I tell my students that are working in the store too, I said, we really do sell it 2 for $1, and it just makes life a lot easier. We have 3 different types of cookies that we sell: chocolate chip, brownie, and then we just switched to a carnival cookie, which is kind of like an M&M cookie. We previously had sugar cookies in there as another type, and that was our least popular seller, so we phased out the sugar cookies and switched over to the carnival cookies. Kids like it. The smell of freshly baked cookies goes well. And then I will also do, when our FBLA has concessions, we will bring the cookie oven down there and sell freshly baked cookies at that part. So we do buy all of our cookies through our local food vendor. So we don't buy our cookies through Amazon. We just go through the same vendor that actually supplies food to our hot food lunch program. It does take us a little bit longer to order, but the price point on that one is pretty good. And then we order directly, and we get like the Otis Spunkmeyer bags and those types of things. And I do have a chest freezer in my classroom for keeping the frozen cookies frozen, and then all the other items that you need, gloves and tongs and that type of thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. Appreciate you sharing that information. As we love to hear from other, I know Keith had clarified it's Otis Spunkmeyer Delicious Essentials is, I think, the name that we were looking for that meets the healthier generation guidelines.
What's it called again?
It is called Delicious Essentials Cookies, Otis Spunkmeyer. So thanks.
Thank you.
There's a question from Kayla. Can you use any oven to bake the cookies? I remember that and back in the day, they used to, like, depending on Katie said she got her oven for free. Otis, usually they would give you a free oven. They could give you free displays. Keith says when you bake in your store, you're then regulated by the same regulation as a food service. So maybe that's a question. So when you bake in your store, are you then regulated by the same regulations as a food service at your school? So that's a question for the group. So Katie's not sure.
I'm not understanding the question.
Keith's going to clarify it. Here we go. Go ahead, Keith.
So what I mean by this is, when the health department comes into your school, are you then like an extension of your, we have Airmark, or you might have, I don't know, whatever your school lunch program is, or if your school runs your own lunch program, do you just are like an extension of your, or do you have to like follow the same guidelines as everybody else? So the one reason I don't currently cook cookies is because I don't have a sink. So I have zero way to clean any of my stuff, and my health department would not even let me even do that. You know what I mean? So I'm just wondering, how does everybody get around that?
So Oshkosh West was audited this past year by our by the health department for our school lunch program, and at Oshkosh, so our cafe and our school store are their own entities, so they are not an extension. So when we were audited, that it was 3 separate entities within the school. So lunch program being one entity, the cafe being one entity because it's not confined to the school store, and then the school store was a third entity. So you had to provide all documentation of SmartStat compliance and all that. But I didn't have a sink, and I was not marked down. So I don't know if I got a nice person that day, but that's what I went through.
Yeah, Katie said that they've got, she's got to follow guidelines. They've got a sink in an adjoining room. Anyone else, before we jump on, I know Kayla's got a question. Anyone else about food guidelines or any kind of experiences that you've had where people have done inspections or food inspections regarding your store if you're making food? Sarah Van Berkham said, I didn't have a sink in the old store, but we used a food service dishwasher for cleaning cookie supplies and coffee pots. I know Kayla asked, does anyone have a vendor contact that they're willing to share to get the free oven? So I think that's, if anyone's knowing about potentially, and I know when Otis went through a transition or like a merge, they stopped necessarily going from there. So
I can, later today, I can put the free oven program in the shared collaboration folder.
Cool, thanks. All right, and I know Sarah said I use Gold Star Coffee out of Sun Prairie. It allowed me to use a free cookie oven. They don't sell Otis cookies though. So other comments about popular products. So this could be food products. So I know we talked about cookies. Anyone want to raise their hands to talk about what else is popular? What else is popular for clothing? What else is popular for school supplies? All right, Sarah, thank you so much. We're going to have you share, so whenever you're ready.
Okay, I actually started a coffee service for students that they could come in and buy coffee before school. But then also during my first hour students deliver coffee to teachers. So I sent out early on before the school year started, a Google form with different types of coffee that they could order. And they place that order, and then my students before school prepare the orders, and then they deliver them right before first hour or during first hour, and then have first hour to clean up as well. That's why I was asking about, can you put stuff on account with the Square, because then we just put all of the teachers' account billing on account at the end of each week, and then we sent out an invoice at the end of each month. And that went over super well. In fact, it started out with students in the special needs class to pull them in and work with my marketing students who were running the store. And that was an amazing collaboration because it allowed those students to gain some valuable skills as well. So teachers really responded to it. It really added a lot of sales in our store because it was such a small store. So it made it a much more profitable component in that store.
That sounds amazing. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate sharing the coffee sales idea and delivering for teachers. Looking at comments, we also heard beef sticks. So beef sticks was a item that could sell. Hot chips is another one. There's a question to the group that asked, does anyone do slushies? So slushies, any comments about slushies, or if you do, maybe you can put it in the comments there. I know Kim kind of put in a link for Deca Partners as well. We got a bunch of comments in here. Amanda said, used to do slushies, wasn't worth the headache. I know they can be great, but obviously it's a mess, very messy work. Coffee's easier. I think you got to just look at your health guidelines to determine like what you're able to do. I know if you don't clean the machine, that it gets real nasty, and then it becomes not even safe to serve. So cleaning happens regularly for the slushies, but kids love them, and they do meet the health guidelines. And there's some products out there that can also be able to have additional vitamins and things. So Any other comments about food, popular food, or any questions that people want to add? If you want to raise your hand, I know some maybe do supplies. I don't know if there's any school stores out there that, oh, thank you, Terry. We got Island Oasis V8. Fruit smoothies are popular but messy. So thanks for sharing that. I know some school stores will partner with different CTE departments. So like you have family consumer science or culinary to be able to have them make food and then they sell it. I know some would partner with technology and engineering and they would sell like engraved items or products that could be in the store. Are there any examples that have been successful that you've collaborated with other departments that have you want to share? I know we've got some additional comments about which beef sticks meet the USDA guidelines. When we get into some of this. So got some other questions for that. We've got Keith can share because people are asking. Keith, go ahead, Keith.
So Michelle asked, has anyone recently proposed to have food? How did you go about that? So I've had food ever since I had my school store, but our previous food service program kind of made us stink about it a lot because we would sell, at that time it wasn't compliant or whatever, but we would sell stuff that the kids want, and obviously the food service was selling, carrots and stuff. So when we put out bids as a school district for a new food service, because the contract was up, the new food service Airmark had to abide by the fact that we were adding in school store as an extension of the classroom, project-based learning, blah, 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 blah. So they couldn't really throw up a stink about us having the school store. And it actually works well now because I will piggyback an order off of their order because they obviously have to be compliant with, smart snacks in schools. They do upcharge me a little bit, which kind of irritates me a little bit, but it's not anything. I would still be cheaper than me driving to Sam's Club. And I used to drive to Sam's Club 3 times a week to purchase stuff. So, I just get upcharged a little bit for my school lunch program and they add right onto their Cisco order anything and everything that I could need. So I don't know how big your school district is. If you do food, if you do an outside bid for food service or if it's just within your school district, that could be, something to get your CTE coordinator and or your administration on.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. Appreciate it. Additional comments? Katie, thanks for sharing that you're looking at partnering with Tech Ed for maybe creating stickers for the upcoming year. I know Sarah Van Berken mentioned that school supplies don't sell super well with poster board, calculators, lip balm. The postage stamps sold okay, which is kind of was a surprise to her. Couldn't sell cookies during food lunch service time, so obviously there's guidelines within. So as you work, and for those individuals that are trying to start a school-based enterprise, trying to collaborate with your school lunch program, it can be good and bad. It can be challenging. If they get buy-in knowing that you're providing items or options that they can't do, they might say that's a win. If they think you're a direct competitor and they struggle, I always wanted to be able to have kids be able to use the lunch codes or their lunch accounts to be able to buy in our school store when I had one, and it didn't end up going that well because the lunch program shut that idea down. So moving on, we look at country meat sticks. That's a great success, and we've got a link in there for country meat sticks. I know Sarah said you can't compete with the food service program. No food during the morning. Can't sell at lunch. Some people are buying directly from Cisco. Looking at it from Beth, saying, thinking about print screening our own apparel. Do you recommend us? For my example is I was looking at a vendor in my previous job, and we were buying something that they were basically using like a heat transfer press that I thought, well, why not just do that myself? So I literally I got a heat transfer kind of with the Perkins funds, and some other school stores have done this, having different options where you could be able to personalize and be able to do that. I think Keith, I know, mentioned that they've got a heat press as well. So if others want to comment about this, I think it can be challenging to like personalize clothes on the spot, especially if you're going to want to say, I'm going to do this front and have different names or do different elements of it. But I know, Keith, you've been talking, but Keith, do you want to share anything about heat press and if it's working? Thanks, Keith, appreciate it.
So we got our heat press probably 2 years ago. I bought it used offline somewhere, but the person hadn't really used it at all. Have we used it to make our money back? No. One of the vendors that's going to talk tomorrow is Cheryl Cothey with Elite Apparel. She was able to buy kind of what Tim is talking about, where you can basically get your whatever would be on your shirt or your hoodie on a screen print sheet that you can then press on whatever you want to press it in. It does cost a little bit more, but if you're thinking you want to make like one-offs, or if you want people to be able to have a customized option, that's pretty cool. We also have we have 2 silhouettes between myself and my colleague. So we can run to, Michael's or Joann's and buy some vinyl and make a shirt same day, So those kind of options are good, but you also have to think about what kind of time you want to dedicate. It's not something I can just give one of my students to go do, because if they mess it up, then we're out that money or out those products, which we have to then go buy before the customer wants to get their shirt or whatever. So it just takes a lot of time on behalf of the teacher, which is why I don't think we've made our money back on it quite yet.
Okay. Thank you for the additional follow-up with that. Any additional topics regarding popular food or clothing or items? I know we haven't talked about websites. If some people have experiences with selling on carts, I know some start on a cart because that's just what you have, but any experiences that you want to share about how you might move to like a football game where you're going to do a pop-up school-based enterprise and you're selling clothing, selling additional stuff at a sporting event. So you kind of take your SBE on the road, if you will. So Sean, I don't know if you've done any of that or have comments, but we can pass it.
Yes, I have. So my school store at Oshkosh West, I actually had 3 locations. So one was my main school store. I had a pop-up store at my second main entrance. And then I had a small place at our football stadium, which we contract through UW Oshkosh for all our football games to be at their stadium. So what I would do is I really depend on my vendors to really know the trends. So when I order, I ask them what's big right now. What are you seeing in other school stores across the state or across the country? So I really try to order those things. And then when I bring popular items or new items to those games, and I actually do a sale every game I go to. So it might be 10% off sweatshirts if I know it's going to be a really cold day that day, or gloves, etc. So I always did a small sale at every game to entice my community members to do that. One of my biggest successes with that was at a basketball game. I did about $2,300 in sales in one basketball game by doing that. So it worked really well. And then to answer Sarah's question about how I got students to sell during games, at the beginning of the semester, I actually put up all the games that we are going to be selling at. And so kind of what Diane does at Jefferson is she has minimum hours. I do the same thing. And I first have students sign up for all the after school events first before any during school shifts are signed up for. So all my after school, before school stuff has to be signed up first, and then we divvy up the in school shifts.
Cool. And we've got a couple people that are going to add some additional comments on. Kayla, do you still have interest? I know you put your hand up and now it's now down. So do you still want to say anything, or do you want to? Okay, so let me start with you, Kayla. Go ahead. You're all set. Kayla, we can't hear you yet. Hold on, let me see if, let me try to unmute her. Kayla, can you talk now? Okay, hold on. All right, Kayla, can you talk? Hello? I don't know why we can't hear you. So we are gonna, sorry, Kayla, not sure why we're having some sound issues with yours. We will see what's up with that. We are gonna go back to Michelle. So hold on just a second, Michelle. Attendees, Michelle, you are all set. Go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to address the selling at a football game. I have a very small school and a very small community, and so our football field isn't right at our high school. It's down a couple blocks. And I don't have, like Sean has a facility he can sell out of. I don't. So I just asked my activities and athletic director to have a couple of tables for me, and it's very old school. I pack it up in bins and I take down product and we put it out on the tables. It is cumbersome and it's a hassle, but that's where I get the biggest amount of sales for my school store for the whole year, is setting up at football games. So the community appreciates it, even though they have places they can buy in town. I find they like to support the school store when they can. And it's nothing fancy. It's a couple tables and we just set it up and go from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it. Great. Tracy, I'm going to have you chat next. Go ahead, Tracy.
Yeah, I can't do football games because there's a parent organization that does those. So for basketball games, wrestling meets, parent-teacher conferences, and freshman orientation, I have about 5 rolling racks that I will wheel down to our field house or into the library when we do our freshman orientation. I have a rolling cart that I do folded t-shirts on, and then the rails all hold sweatshirts and pants, sweatpants. And then I just take our tablet from the square down there as well. And just do credit sales, debit sales, no cash sales.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate it. Anyone else want to share? Okay. We are gonna, is there any other questions for the group? I see that Michelle also compete with Football Boosters as well. Agreement that they sell apparel with football logos and also general school apparel, not sports specific. So good follow-up comment to Michelle. Any additional questions, comments regarding popular products or services before we transition to a new topic? Okay. So Sean, thank you for taking such copious notes here as people are adding comments and putting some elements in. Obviously, if like some of you did, if you want to add additional comments in, if Sean missed anything, this would be great. Katie, thank you for sharing that you design annual homecoming shirts. That's a huge sale for you annually. That's great. Sean, if you want to go back to our agenda, I want to just kind of talk about kind of where we are. So we've got about 10 minutes left before we wrap up. what I'd like to have happen is we're gonna briefly introduce the gold certification for Deca. And I know some of you are not Deca advisors, you're FBLA advisors. Some of you aren't Deca or FBLA advisors, and you are just business and marketing teachers. I'd like to just kind of introduce this Deca Gold certification to everybody and talk about almost transitioning how you can use this for next week's topic about integration of curriculum. Because even if you're not doing a Deca program, the school-based enterprise gold certification is a way for you to align your school-based enterprise to standards, to national standards. It allows you to kind of showcase like what the students are learning. It also gives you some kind of goals. So obviously you might not, if you don't have a store today, you may not go from no store to a gold certified store in 1 year, but it's something to kind of focus on for what you can achieve. So Sean, if you want to click on that link, we're not going to spend today in the last few minutes a ton of time on how to complete it. We'll spend some of that next week for those schools that are actually gold certified. So on this page that's Sean's on, there's great classroom resources that we'll actually show you next week. Some more of those resources that have amazing lessons and specific elements that are connected in different instructional units. So really an awesome way to start, regardless if you're an FBLA advisor or not. You can see, so there's a chapter certification process, there's an individual certification. So even if you don't have a Deca program, you could have a school-based enterprise manager where they could take the test. There's a certification guideline for an individual test that you can see on the individual side. We'll talk a little more about that tomorrow or next week. So Sean's going to click on the chapter certification guidelines over here on the left-hand side. What's going to happen, and we're going to zoom in a little bit. We've got standards that are running on the right-hand side that showcase all of the different ways that we're going to connect the dots. Many of you said you want curriculum or you want resources that are going to connect what to teach to like the school store. In the last week, so in 3 weeks from now, we've got a number of these leaders that are on this webinar right now are submitting resources into our Wise Learn portal that are associated with one or more of these instructional areas. So you can see that Sean highlighted it, anywhere from financial analysis all the way down to HR management, and they're outstanding. So I think that's where, when you start thinking about like what we do as a school store advisor, what we do and learn in the school store, it's outstanding. So it's more than we're selling cookies or we're selling clothing. The kids are learning these skills, and that's why we've got an actual competitive event to make it intracurricular for Deca. So you can see that there it talks about what the definition of a school-based enterprise. We get into, with Deca, their certification for food operations, so we can scroll down a little bit. In addition to food operations, we've got retail, so you can actually have 2 different ways to get certified. Some have multiple ways to get certified, so we'll talk through this. The question from Sarah, does this individual certification count for Act 59 funds? I wish it did. At this point, it does not. I think it's because of the amount of preparation for students to complete the exam isn't enough hours, but it doesn't mean you couldn't have students still do it and have the value to have that as an achievable kind of element to have on their student resume. So we can talk a little more about that next week. So we're not going to get into like the how to do it, how to finish it, but if we scroll down to kind of the next section where we get into the first standards, you can skip the statement of assurances, you can get rid of that. So we get into standard 1 financial analysis. So what I want all of you on the call, especially FBLA advisors, if you've never seen this document or this kind of certification would help you to like train. And when you start saying like, what should you teach? So like when we think about like financial analysis, how to open, close, register, or terminal. You can see standards that are listed, describe how the SBE opens and closes business each day. Explain the significance of proper opening and closing tasks, include learning activities. So my suggestion for everyone, especially Deca advisors, is if you haven't looked at this from a gold certification guideline, this can be a way for you to be able to give training and give education to students, even if we go to a hybrid approach or virtual learning coming up in the fall of this coming school year. You could maybe transform some of these different lessons and experiences into online learning. Wisconsin teachers, we've got MBA research in the Learning Center that we've got access to all of the learning activity packets and the labs that are directly related to SBE, and we can kind of talk through this. So if you don't have certain elements of financial analysis that are built into your units or built into your actual classes, there's ways that you could have students or your managers be able to look at this guidelines, look at the Learning Center, look at the resources that are for free that we'll talk a little bit more about on future calls to be able to leverage the learning. Sean, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of how you've done this and kind of your process?
Oh, yeah. So what I have done for the past couple of years is I had a designated class, entrepreneurship, where I've had students complete each section of this about 2 standards a month. So financial analysis and operations would be due by the end of September. And then marketing information management and standard 4 would be due at the end of October. So I try to have it done around November, by the end of November is my goal. So I can give feedback to students and then they can make any adjustments over the winter vacation, because typically this is due right after the winter vacation, or it's very quick. So that's typically what I have done. And then what I've also, what I try to do at Oshkosh is I try to involve other classes into this process. So, you know, when we're looking at standard 1 of financial analysis, of preparing a cash flow statement, balance sheet, and income statement. Most Accounting 1 students can do an income statement and balance sheet. And then I would work with students one-on-one to develop a statement of cash flows, because that's typically in advanced accounting. So I try to integrate that within my course. And then I always use, because I'm a Deca advisor, I use the Deca certification as a incentive to go to ICDC.
And the question was, is this a written report? Katie, the answer is yes. So this is a written report, but what I'm suggesting for you, Katie, and others that maybe don't have a school store, this can be a roadmap to say, like, what are areas that you want to be able to, and you can see like there's levels, gold level, silver level, or bronze level. Like, you don't necessarily have to try to be able to do all of this in year 1, but it's a written report that students, could be the managers, could be the class that complete this. And honestly, even if you don't have a full-blown Deca program, you can submit this to Deca Inc. and you wouldn't have to compete at districts. You wouldn't have to, you could be able to qualify and get recognition for your school-based enterprise. They need to be in Deca, but you could honestly register for the couple of kids that are doing it. So I see the comment saying, Keith, I did my SBE 5 years before starting Deca certification. Does not have to be done your first year, which is totally true. So we are going to be out of time. So we're gonna wait on this, Sean, because if you want to zoom in, yeah, let's go back to this with housekeeping. I'm going to stop our recording. So first off, thank you for, if you've been still watching and not participating in the Academy, thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. So I'm going to stop the recording.